Good evening, folks, and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'll be talking to two independents, Paul O'Hanlon from Wexford and Joe O'Neill from Swords in County Dublin, who are running as independents in the upcoming election. We'll also have the famous Michael Noonan Skype call that we promised you every week. But first, I want to play the highlights of the reformation of the Land League that took place in Naas last week. Here are some of the highlights. Sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
On the four ideals and aims, basically the Land League is reformed is to be a voice for all the people. Enough is enough, join the fight back. Number one, restore the rule of law, injure no other or their property, promote education in common law, tackle corruption and corrupt practices, prioritise the health and real wealth of the people, put people and their health before economics, tackle the sickness in industry and the sickness epidemic confronts GM agricultural and food promotion, challenge the corporatisation of the Irish people and the validity of the Lisbon Treaty. Number two, resolve outdated, immoral, unjust, invalid commercial rates. The commercial rates is a huge issue, and we're going to have somebody speaking on that. Demand support for the small SME sector, the small business sector. Small business people are the backbone of this economy, and effectively government has just wiped most small business people out, and if they're not wiped out, they're on the way to being wiped out. Resolve mortgage debt and end evictions. Resolve personal debt. On these items, there's 500,000 people in this country at the moment in financial difficulties that cannot service their debt. That is probably close to 25 to 30% of the earning people in the country. It's an enormous number, and our politicians don't seem to care. Number three, reclaim our natural resources, oil, gas, water, fisheries and more. All of these natural resources have been given away over the years, and it certainly requires new thinking and a reinvigoration of all these industries. Recover our national assets from vulture funds and corporations and reclaim our national media. One of the biggest problems we have is that most of what we do is not even covered in mainstream media. So we have gone to social media and various YouTube channels and whatever else to try and highlight what we've been at for the last 12 months. Number four, solve the banking problem with comprehensive national and regionalised public banking. Services incorporating the post offices, the credit unions, and socialise the benefit of banking instead of nationalising it for bad banks and bank debt. Tackle odious debt and demand debit-free money.
International financial interests see fit to place an illegal odious debt on our backs. This debt is not our debt, it's illegal under international law. Now they seek to use this indebtedness to rob our resources and take financial advantage of the entire population. A classic move. Indebt the country, turn us into debt slaves, then plunder our resources. Let us here today stand together and assert our rights as sovereign people. And we are sovereign. We are sovereign. Let us assert our right to the control and ownership of our resources. The government owns nothing, we do. Just remember that. They use buzzwords and fear-based propaganda like water shortages. Well, did you ever? Right. Pollution control. They even dare to take control of our seed, thereby taking control of our very food supply. A bunch of pseudoscience looters robbing our bogs, our water, our wind. The Troika has, through austerity, transformed Ireland and an economic decline into the most rapid economic collapse in modern history. And we're all here struggling day to day when most of us should be retired, trying to survive. Now, they don't ask us to pay for the very water we drink, they command us to pay for the water we drink, to enrich the very same multinational bankers that robbed us in the first place. The Troika and the ECB are now dependent on banks to launder this odious illegal debt, and the banks have become dependent on the ECB to provide them with cheap money. Effectively, we're living in a corporate state. As long as we're content to be lied to, rather than face up to the disgraceful truth, and everyone in this room, we can't do this on our own. Everyone has to stand their ground and take back this country and take back our resources. If we fail to do it, the status quo will be maintained. We have to have the courage. We need a culture of caring about the future generations, and the longer Ireland continues to comply with this illegal bailout and the agreement to sell off our assets, the debt burden will become even greater. We must put these international financial vested interests on notice that Ireland, as Paul said, Ireland is not for sale. I'd like to put a vote to the floor, and the vote is to notify these people. Please note that any contract signed in relation to the disposal of state assets as a result of an illegal odious debt where irregularity or corruption is suspected will be legally reviewed by the people of Ireland. I'd like a show of hands in support of that contention. Thank you very much. We'll take that as a vote of yes. Thank you. Do we have your permission to place an ad in the newspaper to that effect? Yes. Yeah, thank you. You have 420 million people living in an economic and financial system no one voted for. Ireland has 80% of our laws originating from a body no one voted for. 27 countries have accepted a system that makes China and Zimbabwe look democratic. If Ireland was run by 27 unelected members, there would be an outcry. We have to stand together and take back our country. We were stitched up and we were stitched in by incompetent politicians and international financial thugs. Now it's time for us to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, and very carefully undo their corrupt stitch-up.
The reason why I'm here is, yes, I'm affiliated to a political party. This is not about politics right now. Basically what I do is I give people information, and anybody that wants to get the information to basically challenge your bank. I've been in the High Court 37 times and the Supreme Court 7 times. I became one of the very few people who have won the Supreme Court twice as a lay litigant. And yes, the banks are coming back after me, but the reality is for them, they had to dismiss a case last week alone. So now they only have one case left against me, and that under the Supreme Court rule, Superior Court Rule 21, will be dismissed on the 9th of May. So those that want to witness the second case of the AIB being dismissed, I did have some class of speech made out, but basically I just want to ask people here one simple question. 4 years ago, when I started representing myself, I raised issues of liquidity, security, securitization, legal and equitable rights, and nobody had a clue what I was talking about. I made contact with people across the world in relation to arguments that were being placed. And there is one simple question that I came up with, and yet no member of the Supreme Court, none of the 37 High Court judges were able to answer the question. And I'll ask every person here today that same question. If you were told the truth back when you entered into the mortgage contract or the indemniture contract, that the bank was insolvent, was operating illegally, was trading without a perfected banking license, had insufficient capital requirements, manipulated its financial status and share value, and they would sell your loan to a third party, would you have signed that contract? No. No. Well, here's the question. The banks did all that. I produced to the world a document which is registered here. It's a C1 registered mortgage document that has been sitting in the Central Companies Registration Office for now 6 years. This clearly shows that the banking industry of Ireland were operating illegally, trading illegally, funding illegally, and yet nobody questioned it. Why? That's obviously got to do with vested interests. I then initiated a mass criminal investigation against every financial institution in Ireland, dating back to 14th of February 2013, as confirmation from An Garda Síochána. I identified all the criminality that the banking institutions committed. To date, I haven't received one piece of correspondence. I contacted GSOC. GSOC hasn't replied back to me. So we have a banking institution that was operating illegally, selling loans, as you've heard earlier, from thin air, and yet nobody is questioning the legitimacy of the banking institution. You drive your car without a driving license, you'll be convicted. I raised that issue with Judge Ryan. I've been before every judge in Ireland, well, at least in Dublin, and they all know me by first name. Sadly, and this is where I'll go back to my notes, this nation's people did nothing wrong. You and I did nothing wrong. We broke no laws, committed no crimes, but yet every person on this island are paying for the criminal actions of corrupt bankers and culpable politicians. With the greatest respect to Matty. No infractions at all. I witnessed at first hand the consequence of these actions. When I stand waiting for the sheriff, mainly with Jerry, to evict an innocent family from the home, or looking into the eyes of a child who stands over her father's grave. I've stood over 37 suicide funerals, and I would have to tell you that it is the most harrowing feeling in the world. We are not aware, none of us here, how easily the mind and mental trauma can change in a second. These are not just crimes against the innocent, but they're crimes against the humanity of Ireland, of the Irish nation. For too long we have tolerated the hypocrisy of our so-called public representatives, who pass laws that desecrate our families, that adds to the heavy burden we already carry, more taxes, more cuts. Over 90 so-called public representatives, TDs in this area, and every county in Ireland voted in favour of the eviction bill. That's the Land and Conveyancing Law Reform Bill of 2013, one to which I brought a constitutional challenge against, one you haven't heard about because the media won't report what I do. I challenged the Minister for Justice and the Attorney General in relation to retroactive law, which is unconstitutional.
Welcome back. And as promised, folks, we have two independents now, Paul O'Hanlon from Wexford and Joe O'Neill from Swords, County Dublin in studio. Paul, I'll start with you first. Paul, politics, are you in it long?
Had the interest for the last 30 years. Our household was always, on a Sunday, we always debated different issues and we'd all take different points of view. So I always had an interest in politics. And when I was younger, I was in a political party, but for the last 20 years I'm not. But I was always used to putting up posters and going to meetings and doing this and that and the other. And I've avid interest in how the political system works.
Okay. And would it be hard to ask you which party that was?
For my sins and alas, I have to say I'm a reformed Fine Gael member.
Okay. Well, we won't hold that against you, so long as you have your help, Paul. Joe, welcome to the show. Joe, you're running in the Swords area.
I am, yes.
Joe, you're a long time out in Swords, a long time involved in politics.
Well, I have been for about 15 years.
Yeah.
And I came in on the periphery and I was attracted to it, and I ran in the last 3 local elections and I improved my position each time. The last election, the last local election, there were 5 seats, and I would have gotten the 6th seat. I only missed out on the 5th seat by about 300 votes. So I'm happy I'm improving all the time, and the vibes I'm getting are quite good. I have a bigger team working with me this year, and I think I've gotten out to more people than ever this time. And the reaction I'm getting is very good because people know my background in working in the local community. I've done a lot of work with a lot of clubs, and I like to think that I've done well for the clubs. I like to think most of them, if not all of them, have done well and continue to do very well. Swords is an area which is growing and a very vibrant community, the Swords community. They're very, they're people that they certainly have no bother coming out and supporting their clubs. And I'm happy with that. I have served with Fingallians Athletic Club.
Yeah.
I also served River Valley Rangers Soccer Club. I certainly St. Finian's GA Club and Swords Boxing Club. I was chairman of the credit committee in Swords Credit Union for a couple of years, Swords Community Council, and there are many other groups where I gave my time, particularly when I found if they were having difficulty attracting people. And I had no problem if I was ever approached, and I was approached many times, to serve on various clubs and organisations. So I'm pleased with the work I put in, and I might add, there was never any, if you like, top-ups for me because it was all voluntary. I wouldn't have it any other way. If I'm with a club, I wouldn't be sort of attracting money into the club and then taking it out again.
Yeah.
No chance. All I ever look for is respect when I go into these groups and organisations, and there's been plenty of that because I know for all the groups I served, while you couldn't please everybody all of the time, I know the majority of the people were happy with my service.
Tell me this, Joe. Swords, a vibrant town, but still a lot of businesses closed up on the main street, I notice. Probably a reflection of all towns around the country. It has its problems and employment and stuff like that. How do you see that, or can you help in any way?
Well, I think, again, the legacy of Fianna Fáil really, at the end of the day, still hangs over us. No matter how much they might want to paint over it, the legacy is still there. Of course, there has been no help from Fine Gael or Labour. They're attacking the people all of the time, and particularly the business people. We have 5 shops at the last count, 25 shops at the last count, which are closed in Swords, in both Main Street, North Street, and other areas of Swords.
And of course that will have a devastating effect on other businesses that are struggling. I mean, on the last show we talked about business rates, and we talked about footfall being lost by the closure of so many shops, which now means that the people are paying the same rates they always had to pay, but the footfall is down, money in circulation is not there. It really is a huge problem, because not only should we be trying to encourage and help the businesses that are there, but what do we do to open up businesses again, Joe, to get the whole town working again?
Well, I have to say that rates are a particularly big problem, not just in Swords, but throughout the country. I mean, people are paying huge sums of money every year in rates. And what I would be proposing and have proposed is that for all new medium to small to medium businesses should be rate free for 3 years. And then there should be a sliding scale for another 5 years for these businesses to help them to grow. And don't forget, if the 25 shops were reopened in Swords, that could be adding up to 300 jobs.
Yeah.
And these are people who would have more money to spend in our local economy and in their own local economy, plus they'd be paying PRSI and taxes. So the Exchequer would get more money in, and it'd be a win-win for everybody. I think the Fingal County Council and most councils, Fingal is not alone in this, but most councils throughout Ireland seem to have this idea that this money, that they can take as much as they like off of the business people. I mean, that's okay if you're turning over 5, 6, 7 million per year. And even I can assure you, those people are not paying very much in rates either. But the small businesses are ones that are being hammered, and people who would wish to open up a small business. And there's a lot of Indigenous people out there who would like to dip their hand in the business area and there's nothing forthcoming from Fingal County Council.
That's right, Paul. It's the same around the country everywhere. It looks like the rates are stifling any sort of pulling out of recession
it's the
because
same.
it's small to medium enterprise that will pull us out of it. It's the same in Wexford, am I right in saying
Outside
that?
the pale, Ireland do exist. Outside the M50, I have to tell you. Down in, as I say, Wexford, we have a massive problem. On the tourist aspect, I was on to board Irish Tourism, and they told me they don't advertise Wexford separately. It's only advertised in one market. So basically, Wexford, considering we have the Europort, we're not been advertised. We're not been sold as a market. That's on the tourism. On fishing is another major scandal. Minister Coveney has taken it to a very high level that he's keeping 15 boats to St Kilmore locked in using our navy. Over Christmas, those families had no money. They had no money to go out and have a proper Christmas. Minister Coveney needs to realise he has to respect the fishing families of County Wexford. Now on agriculture, it's the same. We have a massive problem regarding this carbon tax and this carbon, as I say, the so-called byproduct from the cows and the slurry and one thing and another. This has been badly handled in Europe. We need these people, ministers, to go to Europe and fight for us, not just sit there like zombies. And as well as that, the MEPs in the European Parliament from Leinster, they're doing absolutely nothing. And I have to say something else regarding our health service. There's people remaining on trolleys. I was speaking to a woman yesterday, 3 weeks on a trolley. She's even actually paying insurance. Plus, a gentleman I was trying to see about linking into the services in the social welfare office, he's spending the last 2 weeks riding up on the bus from Wexford to Dublin during the night because there's no facility or no services that link into this person. It's absolutely terrible. I do think we needed a root and branch look at how local government works and how national government works. And at the end of the day, if you have an interest in politics and your country, go out and cast your vote on May 23rd and go the independent way. It's our country, time to take it back.
Or small parties, Paul. I won't let you away with that. I know you're against the big boys. Tell me this, Joe. Rates in Swords, we discussed that, and you had proposals which seemed good to me. The only one problem I see with the suggestion of, say, not having rates for the first 3 years, if I'm in business and I'm struggling beside an empty unit and somebody moves into that unit and they're rate free and I'm a competitor, I'm going to be feeling a bit aggrieved, am I not?
Well, that's what you might say, but I would feel that maybe you have to really level the playing field at this stage, because don't forget, you would be an established business and you were quite capable, maybe it would appear, to pay your rates. So but what I'm saying is new people into business, small to medium. Don't forget, I had 2 sons who have businesses, and they found they went to their local bank, of which they were customers, and my bank, which I'm with them many years, and the loan wasn't forthcoming, so to get their business off the ground, it was very difficult, and very hard work, and really they were scraping along, and probably to a degree they're still scraping along, and it would have helped their business had they been rates free.
Yeah, that's the issue. But there are a lot of businesses out there, from my understanding, who really are barely surviving. And my fear would be that if I'm on the main street in Swords, barely surviving, and someone comes in beside me, rate free, I will feel aggrieved. Would you agree with that, Paul, if that was happening in Wexford?
Well, in Waterford, they've cut the rates by 50%. Now, the rates is made up of 50% by national government and 50% the council can cut. If elected in Wexford, myself and other independents in Wexford would form a technical grouping, and the first demand we want is rates cut. Also, parking. Parking in the towns to be free. We'll need a traffic warden, but free parking. As we say about the foot traffic, we have to get people back into the centres of the towns. It's about time the planners realise it's a tax against, parking at the moment. Wexford Hospital is another scandal. I was talking to one gentleman and another woman the other night when I was up at the hospital. €20 going in to visit someone dying in hospital. Come on, lads, this have to stop.
Okay, folks, listen, we'll take it up after the break. We'll have a break now and we'll be back. Thank you. Good evening, folks. Welcome back to the show. Before the break, I was talking to Paul O'Hanlon from Wexford and Joe O'Neill from Swords, both independents running in the upcoming election. Joe, before the break, we were talking to Paul about the Wexford Hospital and the troubles with that. I know Beaumont might be just slightly out of your electrical area, but in actual fact, that is the main hospital for Swords. It has good parking at it, but highly priced, I believe.
Well, leaving the prices out, I mean, it's not the hospital for Swords, but it's for the Fingal, Dublin North, that the ambulance service, if it's called and the patient has to go to hospital, they go straight to Beaumont. Now, that's the closest one to Swords. And there is parking there and you have to pay for it, but I don't think that's the problem. The problem is that Beaumont Hospital is probably outdated at this stage. It's my opinion it should be razed to the ground and rebuilt, because I would believe it's not fit for purpose at this point in time. Apart from that, the HSE appear to be skimping on what's required. I had reason a number of years ago to be there, and I was sitting on a chair in A&E, and there was an old lady on a bed, and while I was there, she pulled herself from the top of the bed down to the bottom and slid off the bed. And the nurse came over and lifted her up. Now, luckily enough, she didn't split her head, but she landed on her back. She could have landed on her head. And I said to the nurse, God, I said, that's awful. Surely they should have stoppers for beds like that, particularly where there's old people who get disorientated. And she said, we applied, but the government turned us down. And I told her she'd buy stoppers for a bed for €10. She said, I know, but the HSE wouldn't allow it. And I calculated the most any hospital would need would be maybe 10 for old people, 10 or 12. And you wouldn't be talking a multiple of thousands, maybe a couple of €1,000, €3,000 for most of the hospitals in Ireland with A&E. And no, she was adamant that HSE wouldn't pay for it.
Paul, HSE don't seem to have the money to pay for much, if you ask me. We're too busy paying gambling debts for bondholders and gamblers on a stock exchange, and we have to cut back right to the very bone on health, social welfare, job creation, everything, it seems to me.
It's cuts all the way. But at the end of the day, this government has a responsibility to the people of Ireland. They have a responsibility to the elderly who have worked hard down through the years, who now find themselves with a position in life where they are in failing health and are in a not for fit medical facilities around the country. A number of weeks ago, a gentleman was discharged, I call it euthanasia, discharged from Wexford General Hospital back home. The man is dying. He have a tumour on his spine. This is totally unacceptable. People are being discharged to die like animals. Actually, animals are treated better in this country than if you were a human. I do think Minister Riley needs to get real, man up, and give the service, a health service to the people that we deserve.
He would probably say, though, again, no money, can't do it.
No money, plenty of money for top-ups for this director, top-ups for that advisor, top-ups. There's plenty of money when it's required. Plenty of money to run a referendum that wasn't needed and the people spoke before Christmas. I have to say this, it's about time the government realise we imply them. they're our employees, and they, as an employer, I have to say it's time to give most county councillors and this government their P45.
Joe, I know you've been around the doors in Swords quite a bit now for the last number of weeks. What's the attitude to, well, I suppose our biggest competition is going to be the big parties. What's the attitude to the big parties on the door, Joe? Are they just maybe saying one thing and going to do another?
Well, the reaction I'm getting is they feel there's a lot of hostility coming from the Fine Gael party and the Labour Party and government. And they're not happy. They're being attacked at all sides. I mean, if you take into consideration, we had the property tax. Now we have water charges. God only knows what might be coming down the road. And the people are very, very unhappy. Because at the end of the day, while I think the very wealthy will be able to pay property tax and water charges, ordinary, decent, working people are struggling. The government don't seem to be taking that into consideration. It's as if they're living in a bubble. They don't realise how bad things are outside. People are struggling. I see it myself. And it's not nice that people are being treated like this by this particular government. And by the way, as far as I know, this government, Fine Gael in particular, have never had consecutive wins in any election. And I'm not sure they'll have another one coming in a couple of years' time, because the people are really, really fed up with them, and they've either got to puss up or shut up. And I do see a change in the people. I've been around for a few elections now, got closer each time, and I do see a sea change with the people. People are now beginning to rise up. You see down in Cork and in parts of Dublin now at the moment, there's a total opposition to these water mains going in.
Yeah.
People are furious. And it's all right to get politicians saying, well, they should have come out earlier, we might have listened. That's, well, I won't use the word, but I'm saying that the bottom line, I think they've reached their peak now in their charges and their attacks on working people. And it's about time that maybe we put more independence in. It's very important that we get independence in. If you look at the success of Shane Ross and Claire Daly, now you may not like
And
Claire
Mick Wallace.
Daly's politics, etc. But by God, she's very good, but she's an excellent politician. They say it as they see it. Shane Ross and Claire Daly say it as they see it. And they have been leading this country in opposition practically alone. If you look at Fianna Fáil, they seem to be half asleep still.
Yeah. Paul?
I would have to say Mick Wallace has served the constituency of Wexford very well. I said regarding John Wilson and Garda McQuaid, regarding the penalty point system, Mr. Wallace, Deputy Wallace, Claire Daly and Ming Flanagan were driving that for 18 months. I do think the people realises that they have very good representatives there in Dáil Éireann, independence, but we get to the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is confidence in the system, and it seems that every turn it's letting the people down.
Yeah.
People have no more confidence. They see all the abuse going on and no one getting sacked.
Well, that's the problem as I see it. I mean, I see, governments and the EU stand by and see it's fine to evict families, evict people out of their businesses with receivers, all for paying back the gambling debts of the elite who caused the problem in the first place. But on the water charges, Joe, we were talking there, am I right in saying that, there is a couple of hundred disconnections from the ESB because people can't pay their ESB? Now we have water charges. They can't even pay for the utilities they have at the minute without these water charges. This is trouble looming. Am I right in saying it's looming, it's on the horizon, and there will be big trouble with these water meters? Because if you don't pay, what happens? Do we get cut off from water now? Do we let children go without water in homes?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because at the end of the day, there are over 300,000 people on social welfare in this country. And the bottom line is they're on social welfare because they haven't the means to have a minimum standard of living. And by God, if you give them another bill to pay, sure, that's going to push them further down. And we're turning slowly but surely into the haves and the have-nots. And I don't think any right society would be able to appreciate that, because for the simple reason, you must have God only knows, a minimum standard of living is not a very good standard of living. Look, I personally believe that the water charges came at the wrong time. Maybe 10 years down the road, when maybe the economy picked up and things got better, I would certainly be, I'm against water charges myself. And I haven't decided yet until these men come to the door. But the chances are, if they come to the door to put in a water meter, I will turn them away.
Yeah, well,
I haven't given them permission. I won't give them permission to come to my house.
Yeah, well,
anyone who comes to my house has to have been invited to get into my house to work around it. And I would be of the opinion that if they come to my door, I will turn them away, and they can bring the police or the Garda Síochána or whoever they like. But unless they have legislative paper to say that I can't stop them, they won't be coming near my door.
well, of course,
They won't be allowed.
the Gardaí shouldn't be involved in that matter because it's a civil matter.
It
I
is.
ran the people that did the water away from my own home, and when they were cutting the footpath, they dirtied my van, and I made them come back and wash my van. Paul, 1 minute, sum up why people will vote for you in Wexford, why they should vote for you in Wexford, and what you can do at local level. I know you can't do much at local level, or sorry, national level, but at local level, sum it up in the camera there and just say why people should vote for you and what you hope to do.
Why people should vote for me is your vote is a very valuable thing. As I say, for a start, I'm taking no expenses. I'm not going to take any junkets. If I travel the world, which I have done, I'll pay for it out of my own pocket. I'm quite happy with the amount of money that is paid to a councillor. Second, I won't be part of the clique. And at the end of the day, you want an independent voice at a council table. I am an independent. I have been for 20 years. But as well as that, I look at the health service. I look at an ambulance service that we have has fallen apart. Prime Time recently put Wexford's ambulance service at the low level of competence. Someone 7 minutes from a hospital died because they couldn't get him to a hospital. It's time for a change, and your best bet for change is to vote independent candidates down the line.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
And Joe, just to be fair, a minute for yourself to tell the good people of Swords and Fingal area why they should vote for you.
Well, I've lived in Swords for well over 30 years. A fine town, vibrant town, and as I said earlier, all of the clubs in Swords are fantastic, well supported, and I myself have done my bit for the clubs. Not least of all, I worked for Swords Credit Union as a volunteer. There were no top-ups there, thank God. I also worked with Fingalians Athletic Club. I worked with Swords Athletic Club, St. Finian's GAA Club, River Valley Rangers Soccer Club. I worked for Swords Community Council, and many, many more. And I've always given my time voluntarily. And I've always liked the idea if a club need somebody to help out, and many of them have come and asked me, and I did. I've done 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and I'm quite happy to do that. So I think people in Swords and the surrounding area would know me one way or the other from my work with all of those people or all of those groups. And I believe that a lot of them are now looking at me and sort of saying, yeah, this is a guy we can trust.
Well, folks, that's the show. Time seems to fly when you're having fun. I'd like to thank all our guests, Paul O'Hanlon from Wexford, Joe O'Neill from Swords County Dublin, and our friends in the Land League. The press dubbed me as a political activist, and they say that like it's a bad thing. Does this mean because I'm politically active that the others are politically inactive? Maybe that's why we're in the mess we're in today. Look, we need someone who will stand up to the EU, point out everything that's wrong, and fight for the rights of the Irish people. We need to do that, and we need to do it now. It's more important in this EU election than it has ever been. So please, folks, I'm calling on you to vote for independence in this election, and please vote for Ben Gilroy and the other EU representatives standing for the MEPs. Thank you. I'm Ben Gilroy, Direct Democracy.